Oh, there we go. All right. Sorry about that. Chat should be turned on now. Thanks for flagging that. All right. So I guess we can get started here. Thanks again, everybody, for joining. My name is Will Berner. I'm the growth manager here at LogRocket. Excited to kick off today's talk on confidently shipping issue-free front ends with LogRocket and Cypress. And I guess to kind of preface this, I'm by no means an expert on this topic. That'll be Eli and Noel, but I was excited to hear that we were doing this one because one thing we do as a growth team is manage testing and updates for our website and for the LogRocket blog. And I definitely have been guilty of single-handedly nuking the website on at least several occasions. So hopefully by the end of today, everyone here will be less like me and not doing that.
Yeah.
All right. Quick introduction. Noel Minchow is a growth engineer here representing LogRocket. If anyone has listened to our podcast, the PodRocket web development podcast, might be a familiar voice. Noel, you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah, like I said, I'm Noel. I've been at LogRocket for like 4 years now. Been doing growth stuff for a couple of years. Before that, I was just doing full stack feature work. So I've touched most parts of the product to some degree. But yeah, that's me.
Cool. And Eli from Cypress.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I am Ely Lucas. I am a developer experience engineer at Cypress and happy to be here talking about testing and monitoring and all that fun stuff.
Awesome. So quick rundown of what to expect today. We're going to do just kind of short, high-level intros to Cypress and component testing. I think Eli might be planning to touch briefly on end-to-end testing as well. And then intro to LogRocket and front-end production monitoring. We're going to talk through kind of how we see these two products working together to help eliminate issues and build developer confidence. And then we do actually have a real demo application that we're going to walk through, do a live instrumentation, and go through kind of a practical example. And just a couple of housekeeping items up front. Will this be recorded? Yes. We'll send out a copy of the recording via email shortly after the event. How can I try out LogRocket or Cypress? If anyone's interested, we do have some kind of self-service free options to check out both products. So just visit logrocket.com or cypress.io, and it'll be pretty clear how to get started. And then, yeah, if there are any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I will be kind of manning the chat and shout them out to Eli and Noel as it makes sense, and we might save some for the end as well. All right, Eli, quick introduction to Cypress.
Yeah, sure. So in case you haven't heard about Cypress, Cypress is a free open source testing tool that you can use to test pretty much anything that you can run inside of a web app. So you write tests for it in either like JavaScript or TypeScript, and then it drives and runs a real browser just like a real user would. And from there, you have a suite of tests that you can run to make sure that your app is working expected every time that you go to deploy it. So you might know of Cypress mainly as an end-to-end testing tool, but lately we've moved into component testing as well. And the main difference is that with end-to-end testing, you're testing an entire application all the way from the front end to the back end using the site.visit command. So you visit a URL. The Cypress component testing, it works with these frameworks that are kind of component driven. Frameworks like React, Angular, and Vue are the ones that we have full support for out of the box. And so you develop components or widgets in these frameworks. And with Cypress, you can actually take those widgets and mount those in isolation away from the rest of the app so that you can just test it. It makes it easier to set up test cases. You don't have to worry about having complex infrastructure with backends and databases and web servers up and running. Everything just happens right within the Cypress application itself. So excited to show a little bit more about that today.
Awesome. And then super quick intro to LogRocket on our side. We've been around since about 2015. And originally when we started out, our primary focus was around session replay for front-end development teams. So really this focus on the idea of making it super quick and easy to reproduce user-reported issues, which Noel will cover on a bit as we go through the demo today. And yeah, these are kind of the two primary use cases that we help fulfill for front-end teams. The first being that kind of traditional use case of reproduce and fix user-reported bugs faster. So with our session replay, it's super easy to search for a particular user's session after they sent in a ticket, and then immediately see exactly what their experience looked like, along with some useful diagnostic data from the console and network logs, which typically makes it pretty quick to see, what a user did to trigger the issue, and then what the root cause might have been from a technical perspective. And in the last couple of years, we've started to focus a lot more on this idea of proactive issue identification. So essentially monitoring your application for issues that might not have been reported by a user and surfacing those to you, and also helping you kind of quantify the impact that those issues have on user experience. So we'll look at that in a second here. And then, yeah, so just to kind of preface like the story we're looking to tell today, I'm not here to tell you that if you implement LogRocket and Cypress that you'll never experience a bug again. That would obviously be ridiculous to claim. But what we do think is by implementing kind of robust testing strategies pre-release, and then having a proactive monitoring strategy in place to catch the issues that do make it through to production, you can definitely dramatically reduce the incidence of experience-breaking bugs and make them easier to detect and fix when they do occur. All right, and with that, I'll quickly introduce Bob, who's our hypothetical senior engineer for today's demo. He's working on the Cypress Heroes application, and I think like many of you, Bob wants to be able to go home to his family at the end of the day without the constant fear of being called in to fix experience-breaking bugs. So with that, I'll pass it over to Eli to introduce the Cypress Heroes application.
Great. Let me steal the screen sharing from you here real quick. And get the Zoom stuff out of my way because I can't see anything. All right. Is everybody seeing the Cypress Heroes app?
I see it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so this is Cypress Heroes, and then today we introduce Bob, and we are all Bob. You're a science fiction fan, you might have got that reference. Anyway, so here, this is a sample application that we have that we use a lot to demo Cypress and to do certain things, and it's pretty simple. But basically, if you ever done the Angular Tour of Heroes app, this is kind of like our take on it. Basically, we have a list of superheroes, and with the superheroes, you can hire them, you can like them, and in doing so will like increase their fan counts. If you hire them, it will increase their save counts. As admin users, you can edit them and delete them and add new heroes and upload images and all that kind of fun stuff. So it just gives us a few different pages to play around with here. And in here is the code base. I'm going to go ahead. Actually, I'm going to open it up in terminal instead. So I already have the application running here on this left-hand console, and over here on the right-hand console, I'm going to open up Cypress. Now we already have a pretty good suite of end-to-end testing for the Cypress Heroes app. And get this up in the middle of the screen. And so you can see here now when you start up Cypress, you kind of have this choose your own adventure and what type of testing that you want to do. Like I said, we already have end-to-end testing, which I'm going to show here real quick, but we also have component testing, which we'll dive into. So here in end-to-end testing, you select it, and then you get to choose what type of browser that you want to use. And this is going to automatically look at your operating system and pull up all the supported browsers. One browser that is missing from here, but I do have installed, is Safari. We do have Safari support now, but it's in experimental status. And in order to get it to show up here, you have to set a flag in your configuration file, which I don't have right now. So that's why it's not showing up, but there is Safari support. So I'm going to go ahead and use Chrome. I'm going to say start end-to-end testing in Chrome. And we have a few different specs available here for us. And I'll just go ahead and run it. And talk about what's going on here real quick. So we got these specs and we have Cypress tests that are coded in TypeScript in our case here, but it works with TypeScript and JavaScript. And it just kind of drives the browser. So we write a test. We want to make sure that a particular scenario is happening. We run a combination of Cypress commands, actions, and insertions to get the application into a particular state that we want it to be, and to make sure that at the very end of all of that, that we assert that it is in fact like working properly. So we've got a few different pages here. And this application for it being 2 pages and 3 different specs for each of the pages is pretty well tested on the end-to-end side. But Bob, the engineer, was just handed a brand new requirement from their PM that they want to make sure that the button component can have its focus set to true by default. And one of the kind of the cool things about tests in Cypress is that it's running here in a real browser, and you can come in here and at any point in time interact with it and play around with it. And so what's happening here is our new requirement is that we want to make sure that a button can be focused automatically when it pops up. And so we've heard about component testing with Cypress, but we're not too sure about it. But we think this might be a good opportunity to hop into it. Button's a fairly easy component, relatively simple. And so let's go ahead and give it a try. And we notice if we come over here to the specs list, that Cypress is saying like, hey, this little bit of background, the Cypress Heroes app is a React.js app that's running Vite underneath the hood. And it says like, hey, React.js component testing is available for this project. And it's like, oh, great. Let's go ahead and give it a quick setup. And this is going to run you through a little bit of a wizard on setting up component testing inside your app. The first thing that we do is we detect your front-end framework and your bundler. Now, we do have a little bit of a problem here because this is a mono repo app. It has a front end and a back end. The back end's using Webpack. And so it kind of accidentally thought we were using Webpack because it found it in its list of node modules. But we know we're using Vite, so we're going to come up here and select Vite, and then we'll say next step. This right here is just doing a dependency check to make sure that everything that we're going to need installed is going to be installed and everything's all green here. And then this step right here is showing us all the new files that are going to be created for us. And so it's going to update the Cypress configuration file to add component testing specific information to the Cypress file. And then a few additional support files, which we'll dive into a little bit. So click continue. And now, once again, we have we can choose any browser that we want. And we'll say start component testing. Now, if you've done any type of component testing in the past for frameworks, maybe like testing library or React testing library or something like that, one of the biggest differences between that and Cypress component testing is Cypress component tests are actually ran inside of a real browser. It uses all the same tooling that Cypress end-to-end testing does. So with that, you kind of get to visually see your component tests as they're ran and tested, but you can also use the browser developer tools to go in and inspect the elements, debug the elements. You can set breakpoints in JavaScript, and you get TypeScript mappings and all that kind of fun stuff that comes along with it. So I find it to be a pretty good tool to use as you're developing components as well. So we don't have any component testing specs in here real quick, but we can use this create from component button to create one for us. And so here we can see all the components that we have in our application. I'm going to select button and hit create, and then it's going to show me the code that's going to generate for us real quick. And I'll say, okay, run that spec. Okay, and we can see that we mounted the button and that it rendered here, but it's not looking quite right. And right up here, we have the review the docs if you're having trouble rendering your components properly. And so this would be a good resource if you're on your own. I'm going to walk you through the exact same stuff that it's going to talk about in the docs on how we can actually get this component to look properly. Let's hop over back to code and look at that file that it created for us. So here we have the describe block. And so Cypress component tests are written using Mocha. And so if you've ever done any type of JavaScript testing before, you're probably familiar with this describe that sets up the context of the test and then the if blocks of the actual individual tests. And so we're describing here, we're going to test this component. this test is going to render it. And the main difference between Cypress component testing and end-to-end testing is in the end testing, you use sci.visit to visit a URL. With component testing, you use sci.mount and you pass the component directly to it. And it's going to mount this in isolation away from the rest of the app. And so we're mounting the button. Now, the first thing that we have going on here is that the button takes the text for the button as a child to it. And so we'll just say, hey, give it some text that says click me, like that. And let's take this step one or test one step further and make sure that the text that's appearing or that we set it to is actually appearing on the screen. And so we'll use a selector here using the get command where we're going to select something from the DOM. These selectors are very much like CSS selectors. So you can select things by ID, you can select things by class, you can select things by element name, and so on and so on. We have a whole guide on our best recommendations for writing really good selectors so that they're robust and they don't break on you. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to select it by the element name button. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm pretty sure in my button component, I'm only ever going to have one button. And so I feel fairly confident that this won't accidentally select another button or something like that. And then now I want to write an assertion. And so I'm going to say it should have the text of click me. And so you can see the button now at least has the text and our assertion is passing, but the button's still not quite looking right. It doesn't have the styling that we expected to have. Well, that's because all the styling for the application is actually set up here in the main or in the main file right here. It's all set up here in this styles SAS CSS file. But we're not mounting the main component, we're mounting the button component. And so we actually provide a file that acts a lot like this main file where you can go and import any of the other assets that you're going to need into your application to get it set up. And that is up here in the Cypress folder and here in support, and it is this components. And so what we want to do is we want to import that CSS file. And so I'll give the path to it. And then once that is imported and I go back over here, you can see that it is now appearing properly. Great. So the test that we want to write to get this working properly is we want to make sure that it should be focused when we pass in a prop that says focused. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this test in here so you don't see me writing a bunch of stuff. And so the big difference here is that this focused prop is missing. So let's go through and add it real quick so TypeScript doesn't complain to us. So we'll make a prop called focus and it will be a Boolean. Okay, and let's go look at the test again. Now we're using a different command called sci.focused. This is automatically going to get us the DOM element of what is currently has the focus. But we haven't implemented the actual code to do so yet. And so the test is going to fail because whatever it finds that has the actual focus isn't going to be our button that contains the text, click me. Let's come over here into the button and write the code real quick that will get that to work. And so the first thing that we're going to want to do is set up a ref that will get us access to the actual element, and we'll use the use ref hook to do so. Actually, I'm just going to copy this in so I'm not typing a bunch of code. And then down here, we want to make sure the button uses that ref so it gets set. And then we'll use a use effect hook to set the button whenever the focus property changes. And then make sure we pass in focus as an actual prop. Okay, so every time focus changes, if focus is true and we have a current reference to the button, we're going to call the button's reference command directly. So come back over here to the test and run it again. You can see it happened really quick, but now that it's true. Over here, you can come in here. This is called the command log. It's showing you everything that's happening inside the test. So you can see where we mount the button. You can see where it gets the focus, and it's highlighting the button that it currently found and that the insertion is currently true. So that is the quick rundown of Cypress component testing. And now I'm going to hand it over to Noel to see like how we can use LogRocket to monitor the Cypress Heroes app.
Can I steal the screen share from you, Eli?
Yeah.
Perfect. I guess, yeah, in the interest of time, while I do this, do you want to go ahead and get LogRocket installed in Cypress Heroes for us, just so we can make sure we get through the demo in time here? Cool. Let me find the correct window. Cool. Yeah, so for those who aren't familiar with LogRocket or Session Replay, I'll just kind of talk through what LogRocket is and what we enable quickly. So essentially, LogRocket is a front-end SDK that will send data to our servers, the backend, to help you find issues, debug them more quickly when they arise, and increasingly be proactive. So even if you don't know that something's going on, LogRocket can alert you to issues that may only be happening, even if they're only occurring in your front end and there's no signal on the server. That might indicate it. So at our core, say you have the LogRocket SDK installed. I'm just going to open up a session here so we can kind of look at what you'd get. This is the Instacart website. We just piped the or installed the SDK on here manually, but you can see essentially when a user is navigating around on your website, like say you were an Instacart dev, you could come in and see what the user did, how they were navigating, and if they encountered any errors, these little red pips right here, what they were doing around the time that those errors occurred. This is just the basic playback view. We also have a developer view that's more analogous to like your browser's dev tools that you might be familiar with. So you can up here find like failed network requests and like console logs, all those kinds of things to get a better grasp of what was going on in the user's session. We can kind of come back here. We have a bunch of metrics that can be set up and established over like the entirety of your data set. So we can come in and like add a chart. Say we wanted to see like a time series, or let's say a percentile, and we want to see like the 75th percentile of, what's a good example? Like cumulative layout shift over time. So like how much the page is bouncing around when people first load the page. And we can get a pretty good grasp of like the users that are seeing the worst kind of page bounce, like what that looks like over time on our website. We can do simpler things like just look at tables of users by session count. So like these users in our app, how many times that they had specific sessions, we can come in and say like which elements are clicked the most, like how long are network requests taking on the 50th percentile as a table. And then as you build up more of these metrics, you can then like build a dashboard and kind of put those together into a view to help you kind of see, maybe just the overall health of your app over time. Yeah, and that's kind of the quick version. So one of the I guess the story that we're trying to tell with Cypress is once you kind of are at this point where you've got LogRocket installed and everything instrumented, you can kind of use that tooling to help discover issues that may be happening on your front end, again, before you'd even ever have a signal going. And then once you have it, you can then go write a Cypress test for that case and ensure there's no regression ever introduced as you make further code changes as time goes on. Yeah, I guess, Eli, have you had a chance to pipe a session in yet? I can come take a look.
Yes.
Perfect. I think this is it right here. I'm just going to open it and we'll demo live. Cool. Yeah, so this is a session Eli just set up and recorded. You can see there's a little bit of weirdness here with like images not loading. That's because we're running on localhost and things can get a little funky there. But essentially here, Eli is going to take an action, hopefully, that we will see an error state occur. We might not have processed the data yet. So Eli just deleted a deleted a record on this page. Let me go back and see if this one's populated yet. Should it all be in here, or do you have multiple sessions coming up for me?
There actually might be 2 sessions because it happened on 2 different tabs.
Oh, no worries. Is this it right here? Hopefully this is it. Yeah, cool. So we'll come in here. And right here, yeah, this is it. So essentially, Eli went through the process here of deleting a record in one of his tabs and then coming in and trying to edit that same record at a later point in time. Maybe the browser had become stale or something, but this record that he's editing here, the smoker, has been deleted on the back end. So like, we'll see when he tries to edit, like nothing happens. We get a silent failure. If we come and look in the developer tab here, we just see an internal error occurred right around this time. And again, normally these kinds of things could be silent failures if you don't have explicit tracking set up in the back end, you know, or nothing's going on. And as a dev, if you're trying to get a better grasp of these things, one of the things we enable, this is kind of our new area, is these machine learning powered active issues kind of surfacing. So when LogRocket detects that there's something going on that is like an anomaly, we're seeing a new error, something's broken on your app, it seems like there's an error being thrown that we wouldn't expect to see, and it's probably impacting user conversion, the things you're trying to monitor for, we'll say, hey, we're seeing sessions that have some error happening. Like we're seeing a 500 patch on the patch endpoint here that's failing, like Eli just simulated. So we can go in here and we can like click this and get a view of what happened or what's causing that. So we can like scrub to where that error occurred. It's like boom, right there. Here's someone trying to edit another record that's been deleted, just like Eli just showed us. And then once you know this is going on, once LogRocket's alerted you, hop back over into your test suite, and you can kind of hopefully write a test that covers that case, and you know, rest easier at night. I can pass it back to Eli so he can kind of show how that looks when you're wiring up that test.
Yes. All screen sharing back. Okay, and just to give you a quick overview of what I did in the background while I was talking. So I npm installed LogRocket. Open up Cypress here real quick, and over here in the main file, I imported LogRocket and set LogRocket to initialize. And that's what got us all the data sending to it. So with that, we know we have a problem with our hero edit page, that if for some reason there's a server error when you try to save the data, that it doesn't handle it properly. And that's like, okay, we probably need to do something to better take care of that. Maybe we can just show like a real quick fix. We can show a modal that says, hey, something went wrong. So let's go ahead and do that. Now we could do that using end-to-end testing. However, sometimes it might be a little bit hard to set up a scenario in end-to-end testing to throw that particular error from the server when it happens. But we can also use component testing in this as well. And with component testing, we don't have to worry about actually communicating with the server. We can set up data to pass in directly as props into our component. And we can also intercept network requests and mock responses, including like status codes and stuff from network requests to do that. And so while Noel was talking, I went ahead and set up a test right now for our hero edit page that's testing the happy path. And let me walk you through it here real quick. And so we're setting up a hero for us to work with. And then we're also setting up a couple of routes because since we are actually using this component at a higher level, this component is actually a page in our system, and it has dependencies like React Router and being able to pull parameters off the URL and all that kind of stuff. We need to make sure that we pass in that information for those particular components. And then here, before each of the tests, we're setting up some particular network mocks and network requests. And so we're using the sci.intercept command to do so. And so we're intercepting a GET request. And when a GET request comes into this particular URL that matches, we're going to pass back that hero as the response. And so this network request won't actually go to the rollback end. We're going to intercept it and provide the mock response. Same thing with another request that it gets to get back a list of powers. So you can select the powers that your hero has. And then here, when we actually try to update the hero, we're going to intercept that and respond back with the 200 status code, give back the body of the hero, and then we're also going to alias it. And here is the test. And so here we got sci mount with providers. And the reason why we're using a different command here is because we are going at that higher level. We need to make sure that we have things set up like React Router, our global context for our app. We're using React Query in this application. So we need to make sure that we have that set up and whatnot. And so I created a custom command to go through that. Now, I'm not going to dive into the custom command during the webinar today, but if you are interested in seeing what this looks like, I'll make sure that I'll throw a link to the repo in the chat so that you can see that. But here, so we are going to mount the hero page. It's going to have everything it needs. We're going to get that button. We're going to click submit, and then we're going to go to a spy that we set up, because what happens when you click the submit button, it's supposed to go to the home page. I'm not actually wanting to set up the homepage here. I'm just wanting to make sure that, like, hey, the React router was called to navigate to the home route. And so I want to make sure that, like, hey, that navigate spy should have been called with a path name of the root URL. Let's watch that run real quick. Start up component testing again. And here's the hero edit page. And so you can see that we got our test hero that we set up with all of its test data. Over here, you can see that these fetches with the green circle that's not filled in, these are indicating that these were the intercepted network requests. And so it's shown that those two network requests were called. We're finding the submit button, we're clicking on it. Now we can see that the put request is intercepted and that we pass back the stub and that the navigate spy was called with that path name of the root folder. Let's set up the failing scenario now. So come over here and add a new test. And I'm just going to override. We're setting up this put up here in the before each, but down here in the individual test, I can override that. And so, hey, I'm going to say when we're saving here to this particular URL, return back a status code of 500. And what we want to do there is show a modal that says, hey, something went wrong. We'll come over here and run the test. The first one passes. The second one doesn't pass, though, because we have not yet actually modified the hero edit screen to show that modal yet when error happens. And let's go and make this test pass now. So over here, we're calling the React queries mutate async event, and then we'll just need to catch any errors that come from it. And when it errors, we want to call our set modal command, which is a global command particular to the Cypress Heroes application that we can use to show any kind of content inside of a modal. And for now, we'll just say, what was this text supposed to be? Something went wrong. And definitely we'll improve this later for sure. Okay, now you can see that got some flashing going on here right now between the two. Let me see if I can get that. There we go. So you can see that our modal is now on that state, and our assertion found that div tag that we set and the text inside of it. And there we go. Will, has any questions popped up yet to take a look at?
Yeah, we have a question from Hassan. How do we interact with elements within an iframe in Cypress?
That's a good question. So we do have a guide. I would say that full support for iframes probably isn't quite there yet. Let me find the guide here real quick. And I will paste this here in the chat for you, Hassan. But if you take a look at that, yeah, I want to, oh, hold on, I need to send that to everybody. Oh, I put it in the Q&A. Derp. No, I only have the ability to send it to hosts and panelists, not to everyone.
Oh, I can resend it to everyone, Eli.
Okay. Yeah. There you go. All right. So that's our guide for using iframe. I'll talk about like how to do things, the limitations that you might run into. We are working on, it is in our roadmap to improve iframe support to be able to handle certain scenarios better.
Cool. We have another question. This one from Dimitri. Is it possible to configure Cypress to generate test files with semicolons at the end of JS statements?
So that little bit of when I came up here to the new spec button, I'm not too sure what it does by default. Let me just create a new one. No, it doesn't. But if you have a formatter, this is what I typically do is whatever it generates, I quickly hit format and then it will add it all for us. Right now, the spec generation isn't configurable.
All right, cool. I guess I can take back over and just run through the recap slides, and then happy to take any other questions that come up here as well. So yeah, to just kind of reiterate the process we went through here, our fictional developer Bob here had the unfortunate occurrence of being alerted to this 500 server error. But thankfully, due to having LogRocket in place, it was quickly brought to his attention and he was able to see, what was the impact with that silent failure. And then from there, be able to quickly generate a component test that handles that case within Cypress. So really what we're hoping to help people with here is just find more peace of mind when deploying front-end code. There's always the chance of introducing issues, but with robust testing and proactive production monitoring, we can at least prevent as many of those issues as possible from occurring in the first place, and then catch and fix the ones that do make it through more quickly than we would otherwise be able to. So I think, unless you guys had anything else, that's it. Are there any last questions from the crowd?
I do want to make sure that I share the link to the repo, to the Cypress Heroes app.
Oh, yep.
And so I will chat that to you and then chat it to everybody.
Oh, we have a question from Chris. Noel, maybe you can take this one. He asks, is LogRocket streaming user actions for the entire user session, and what is the performance like?
Yeah. That is a good question. So we monitor performance impact very, very closely. Everything's spun up like an independent process, an independent worker. So we shouldn't be ever like blocking the main thread from rendering or anything like that. We actually use a tool called the mutation observer underneath the hood, which is like a first-class citizen in the web in JavaScript. And essentially it monitors the DOM just for changes and watches for changes. And so we're capturing like diffs, deltas, as the state changes and as the network requests are made. And then we hand that data kind of into this threaded worker, and it sends the data up to our backend via a protobuf, like to make it as small as possible. Yeah, we have people running LogRocket on like very big, highly performant web apps. I say we've like, I can't say that there is zero performance impact, but it's like, very, very, very minimal in all the testing we do. Like there's typically other stuff running on the page that's orders of magnitude more impactful than the SDK.
Awesome. Thanks, Noel. And Eli, I shared that link in the chat, so everyone should have the repo for Cypress Heroes as well.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, it looks like we're right on time. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining. If anyone has any other questions that come to mind, we will be sending out an email afterwards, so you'll have our contact information, and we're happy to chat there. But thanks again. Thanks, Eli and Noel, and hope everybody has a great Thursday.
Yeah, and thank you guys too, and thanks Will and Noel for inviting me to be a part of this today.
Thanks,
Of
guys.
course. Yeah.
Take it easy.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.